Hello, Tim. Welcome
Hello,
back
Jess.
to Podcast Extra on the Exposure Ninja High Performance Digital Marketing Podcast YouTube channel. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's good to have you back. Dale and I, we did it, but we missed you.
Oh, well, I'm sure Dale did a fantastic job indeed.
I
My
was
sister did
actually
text me to
moderator.
say, oh, were you?
Yeah.
How exciting.
So
I did listen to the
it was all
podcast
good.
and I thought it sounded good. I thought it was a good topic. We had lots to talk about. And today we have a heck of a lot of news to talk about. It feels like there's lots of really interesting things going on in sort of just the online world at the moment that might not necessarily feel like they impact marketers, but I think they really, really will. Starting off with this one definitely impacts marketers. YouTube and Google have been in a bit of an ad scandal, I would say. For those of you who don't know, there's a certain type of YouTube ad called TrueView. Now, if you've ever used YouTube, you'll see these adverts that come up. They stay on the screen for like 5 seconds, and then in the corner, a little box appears that says skip ad. Now, one of the draws of these adverts for advertisers is that you only get charged if somebody's watched it for more than 30 seconds. So if they've chosen not to skip and they've watched it for more than 30 seconds, that kind of counts as an impression, and that's when you get charged. But this is definitely a different story if you are on part of the Google display network, which shows these same ads, who are running these ads on the website somewhere, right in the bottom corner where the user doesn't see it, and they're playing said ad on a loop and charging you for each 30-second loop of this ad. So I'm not really sure how this happened or how they've gotten away with it for so long. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Tim. Just before we started this podcast, you said this is just wild. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I think that the most amazing thing to me is the scale of the fraud that is being alleged here. And that's what it is. It's fraud. It's advertisers paying for video impressions that they effectively weren't getting. So Google has very specific definitions of what a true view looks like. And this company, so there's an ad analytics company called Adalytics who has done this study into TrueView, and they're claiming that in some cases 73% of all the sort of billable TrueView ads are not legit. They're either playing, like you said, at the bottom of the page, they're on mute, they're just auto playing. Some of them are stacked on top of each other. Some of them are hidden by other ads. You've got multiple ads playing at the same time, both on mute, with advertisers being charged for all of this. So the scale is absolutely wild, and there's talk about YouTube having to refund what could amount to billions of dollars in ad spend if that 73% number carries across all of the TrueView ads that have ever been bought. So it's really stunning that this level of fraud could exist.
Yeah, when you see kind of the people that have been affected, it's businesses like American Express, Kayak, Disney Plus. Like, it's not like it's like small, just random people. It's really, really big names. And so I think, these people have big legal teams, and they're going to be going straight after Google for this. I think what's interesting as well is it specifies in the TrueView kind of terms and conditions that it's audible and visible. Like, it's really funny that they kind of specified these two things. It almost feels like they were trying to throw people off the scent, right? And just being like, well, of course it will never be shown muted in the corner of a screen where people can't see it. So yeah, it's just absolutely astounding. Absolutely astounding. Completely.
For me, though, there is I know that YouTube and Google, they have done something naughty here, clearly, and the platform must be made to pay, and refunds are probably going to happen. But for me, the real mugs here are the advertisers and brands, and I think that they have to take some sort of responsibility for this. If 73% of your ads are being shown, but people aren't actually watching them, or they're not even hearing them, and you don't notice, why are you pouring billions of dollars into that platform? And I know that this is, brand advertising, and we're looking for sort of ambient uplift in brand visibility or, whatever. But that is ludicrous to me, that this ecosystem could exist where 73% or up to 73% of the inventory could be fake. And the brand hasn't noticed, the media buying agency hasn't noticed, the creative agency has noticed. No one in that group has noticed. And I think, to me, it shows the disconnect that can be caused if people's incentives aren't aligned, right? The media agency, they're incentivized to maximize budget because they're taking a percentage of all the budget. So to be fair, they don't care whether or not these ads are being seen or heard or anything. No one's tracking, are they? No one's saying, oh, is it, are we advertising something and we're checking to see what the impact of that's going to be on sales? That's not being done. The creative agency, they're not producing the sort of ads that are going to lead to direct responses. They're just producing sort of brand awareness ads. It's just basically a nice piece of cinema that someone has objectively or subjectively decided looks good and represented their brand. And then the people in the advertising, the people in the brand themselves are working client side. Maybe they're incentivized to get more budget for their advertising next year or whatever. So, Exposure Ninja, we are heavily direct response. We're heavily ROI driven. And I think it's exactly this type of thing, which is the reason why, because there is so much fluff. And if you're not tracking business outcomes from your marketing campaigns, worst case scenario is exactly this. You get however many years down the line, billions of dollars of ad spend, and it turns out 73% of it didn't even exist in the first place. And you didn't realize that. For me, Jess, is the worst thing about all of this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's very easy to get caught up in kind of, oh, well, look how many impressions you've had. That's good, right? Even if you're not getting sales from it right now, that's people who are thinking about your brand. And of course, yeah, if your goal is to raise awareness, then sure. But at the same time, yeah, how did they miss this? How were they not seeing, oh, we're spending this much, but for some reason we haven't had like any increase in sales or anything? Like, that must have been what was happening. And I don't know if Adalytics, the business that did this study, if they'd been tipped off by some brands, or if they were just like, this is interesting, let's just research it. Because in all the articles I've read, you haven't got any statements from any of these big brands, maybe for the reasons that you've just outlined, Tim, in that they're embarrassed and they don't want to admit, yeah, we weren't paying attention to our ads. I didn't even think of it that way, but you absolutely are right on the money there, Tim. Right on the money there. That is, yeah.
Well, who else is right on the money? Adalytics, because this is the thing that they're offering tries to solve, right? Or at least partially solve. And it has to be said, this is a fantastic piece of PR outreach. They've done a blinding job of this. So they've got this really, really long, I don't know how long the post is, but it's one of the longest published sort of reports I've seen. Super well researched, loads of examples. This thing has taken them a lot of time. And what a way to get on the radars of people who are all of a sudden in serious pain about this situation, which Adalytics wants to try and solve. So fantastic piece of outreach. I don't know how many links this thing has picked up, but it's in all the national media, and their report on their website is where they share all of the data. So the links are going to be stunning, high authority, good quality, high in pain audience. I mean, it's beautiful. If there was an agency involved, reach out, we'll buy you whatever. This is great. This is really good.
Yeah,
a masterclass.
Really, really great piece of work. Moving on to our next piece of news. It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't talk about Twitter and just social media in general. Tim and I had a chat earlier on today where we were talking about how there's a lot of unrest in the social media space. And Tim even said something about how it feels like the end of social media as we know it. Maybe you weren't quite that dramatic, but that's kind of the vibe you gave off, Tim. It just feels like there's a lot of unrest. And the most recent thing that's happened that's kind of made people unhappy with a website is that Twitter has limited free users. Well, it started off at limiting them to seeing only 600 tweets per day, which sounds like a lot, but it includes all the tweets that you kind of just scroll past that you don't really care about. And I mean, it was seriously trending. Rate limit reached, which is the notification that people were getting, was trending. So many people were saying they couldn't believe that they'd already hit their limit for the day. And interestingly enough, if you were a paid user, you would get 6,000 tweets that you could look at per day. So a lot of people then felt like this was a ploy by Twitter to make some money and get people signing up to Twitter Blue, even though they were saying it's a temporary measure. We're just doing it to, you know, stop scraping happening and stop AI bots getting information from Twitter. They have since increased it. I think it's now 1K for free users and 10K for paid users. But it was just a really strange move that's made even more people hate Twitter and has very likely significantly impacted any businesses that rely heavily on Twitter for traffic. If they're not in those tweets that people are seeing, they're not going to be getting the visibility that they would normally get if people were scrolling Twitter all day, which it seems like they do. It just seems like another weird move by Twitter.
And that's it, right? It's the uncertainty. It's that if I'm a creator or if I'm a brand and I want to build my audience, and it's always a risk, isn't it? Choosing which platform to make your primary platform is a risk, because you don't want to, you don't want to attach yourself to a horse that's going to be jumping off a waterfall any day. And that's, I guess, the feeling that people might get if they've built their visibility on Twitter for so long, and then they're seeing all of these different things happening at different times. There was the SEOs have been really interested in Twitter limiting visibility for people that aren't logged in, for example, because that includes Google's crawlers. So there's some, I think I saw Cyrus Shepherd say, 37% of Twitter's organic traffic had dropped off almost over the weekend. And that's going to further restrict people's reach who are posting on Twitter. And it's that constant concern that you never know if the thing is about to implode. It's a bit so Donald Trump, the reason Donald Trump is so entertaining is because of the uncertainty, but that uncertainty is fun from the outside to watch, but it's horrific if you're like in there. And if you're tied to that, then terrifying. So I'd be worried if I was a brand or a creator that had built my profile on Twitter. And for sure, it seems like the logical thing to be doing is to make sure you're diversifying and that you've taken your audience off platform in case the next one of these updates proves fatal.
This is exactly it. It definitely feels like there's this kind of discussion, right? I've heard Dale say before, if you have an account on social media, you're kind of living on rented land, right? And the landowner, Twitter or Twitch or Reddit, can choose to do with that what they wish. But I feel like they're forgetting that their product or their customers are the people that they're pushing away. Like, you wouldn't see Amazon making it more difficult for people to buy products. You wouldn't. It just seems like a very strange move. Interestingly enough, Meta's Twitter competitor leaked on the Google Play Store a few days ago. It's called Threads, and they've confirmed that it's going to be launching on the 6th of July. And considering all the unrest on like Twitter and Reddit, I think people are going to be like, I'm sick of this, and be looking for somewhere new that also just so happens to be really easy to sign up for. Like at the moment on Instagram, if you type Threads into the search bar, there's a little ticket, you can click it and it kind of comes up, gets you to download the app if you want to, like kind of pre-install it, which I've actually done because I'm actually really excited for this app. Haven't really been that intrigued by Mastodon or, for instance, Blue Sky, that actually had to limit signups over the weekend because so many people were moving over from Twitter. But I think it seems like it is the perfect time for them to be dropping this. I don't know if they've sped it up because of what's happening, but regardless, I think it's a good move.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, Facebook has a bit of a history of copying other networks' functionality and people thinking, well, this is too blatant, surely this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But whether it's, Instagram Reels or Stories or whatever, like a few of these things really have stuck, and they really have dented whatever they were copying, whether it's, you know, Snapchat or with Reels, actually keeping people on Instagram and getting some good visibility. So I don't think you can write Meta off. And obviously it'll be able to port the audience over from Instagram, which is one of the struggles that, you know, Mastodon has had as a competitor to Twitter, is that you got to sort of start from scratch. Whereas potentially if Instagram is porting over its users to Threads, right?
That's the one. Yep.
Then, you know, it's already got the world's biggest creators and potentially already got those audiences already sorted. So you don't have that horrible blank screen when you log into something and you have to go and find all the people that you follow. So that really could give it an edge. I think it's a super interesting time. I think you said earlier they probably got a bit of spare server space kicking around from all the metaverse projects that maybe haven't taken off. So let's just redeploy that.
Yeah. I think it's really exciting. You know, I definitely, even before all this happened, I definitely started to fall out of love with Twitter. Actually, it was pretty much from when Elon brought it. I just felt a very big shift on that platform. And every time I was visiting it, I was just having really unpleasant experiences. So I'm kind of hoping that, I'm not saying I always have a pleasant experience on Instagram, but I'm kind of hoping it attracts a different type of person. And maybe all the nasty people can stay over on Twitter and just, you know, stay there.
Yeah. I think from an advertiser's perspective, great, right? Because the Twitter ad product is horrible, but it would be great to be able to advertise sort of in public conversations that are happening. And that's something that you don't really like. Twitter is its own unique thing. It's where the news breaks. It's where you get, you know, the latest from people that you don't follow, but that in a logical way, you get some great conversations happening. You can very easily connect with, you know, high profile people. And I think a load of that is really exciting for advertisers, and as marketers we would love to tap into those conversations and get into those conversations. And if, you know, with Meta's ad product, which is so good, not perfect, but it's so good compared to Twitter's, having Threads as another channel that we can advertise in through that, I think is really exciting. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into that. But it does feel like a change in what's happening in the world. And I think there's loads of things which are converging, right? You've got high interest rates, meaning that capital isn't so easy to come by. So investors are looking for real returns in their investments. And that's really challenging for a lot of social networks, because running a social network is not an inherently profitable thing to do. It's actually quite difficult to monetize connections. You have to have an ad play, it seems, to be in there. To be profitable, and that's difficult to do, and Twitter has clearly found it difficult, which is why they're having all of these other issues going on. And the same with Reddit. You know, these companies are where previously having open access to all of the content on your social network has been a good thing, because then you get more visibility. Now they're looking at large language models crawling all of this data and saying, actually, we don't want to be open, we want to monetize that, so now we're going to close up. This is going to be a walled garden. And that means that discovery is more difficult. And that means that you don't have as much sort of outsider engagement. So it does feel like a time where social networks are having to look at a different business model or adjusting their business model. And that is going to mean that some of the features that us as users have come to expect for free, we're maybe not going to see. And advertising is going to continue being here as marketers, of course. Fantastic. Give us all the data. We love Meta's ability to suck data out of individual users. And it looks like they're only going to get more to play with. So yeah, as a marketer, I'm happy. As a user, obviously, this does feel there is a bit of a sense of loss. And I think that's quite common amongst people.
Yeah, just to back up what you said there about social media is not being profitable. I found out recently Twitch, the biggest streaming site in the whole world, has never been profitable, not once. Even under Amazon's ownership, it has never been profitable. And considering they don't, you know, they give their creators like a 50-50 split, which is not good for creators. You know, they run loads of adverts, they've still not been profitable. And it's just, yeah, I think people don't necessarily realize how much money goes into this. We've had a comment on the live stream over on YouTube, which if you want to watch this podcast live, you can do on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. on our Exposure Ninja High Performance Digital Marketing podcast YouTube channel. And we've had a comment from Ron Henry saying email list building still reigns supreme and SMS has promised too. And I think you're probably onto something there, Ron. We've been saying for a while that email is kind of an unsung hero. You know, people are like, nobody reads emails, but it's still normally the number one app that people check during the day. And I think there is a lot of promise for that. So yeah, if you're kind of a very social media heavy business, it might be wise to start thinking of ways that you can get more emails, whether that's by hosting giveaways, doing incentives like for discounts and stuff, or just offering a really, really great newsletter. We're starting to get a little bit limited on time, but Tim, I think you have some news about Bing, ChatGPT, and how things are kind of going in that space. Things are quite down in the AI world, it seems, but be excited to hear.
That's true. It's true. But I think now these tools have been out, we're starting to get a bit of insight. This isn't necessarily new news, just to caveat this, but we haven't done a podcast since this came out. So Bing plus ChatGPT makes Bing Chat the sort of AI experience inside Bing. And as marketers, we've been really interested to see how these new AI integrated search engines change user behavior, particularly from an SEO or a search ad perspective. There are some massive implications if user behavior is very different. So, you know, as soon as we saw Google's version of AI search results, of course, everyone's concerned, are we going to be getting any traffic if all the answers are given inside the search results? So any snippets of insight that we get from either Microsoft or Google, we are really interested to see how user behavior is actually changing with AI search results. So in SMX, which is a search-based conference, I guess, Mike Schechter, who is VP of Bing at Microsoft, gave a bit of a 3-month school report on what we were seeing with Bing usage. There was also a segment from the equivalent in Google, but she gave almost no information at all. Classic Google, very little insight about what was happening whatsoever. So we can only look at what's coming out of Bing and say, okay, if we can sort of extrapolate this across Google, then this gives us some sort of indication about where SEO and PPC are going and the viability of those as future channels. So I think as a marketer, good news. So some of the main takeaways from this, firstly, are people actually using it is the first sort of question that we would have. Mike said that there have been 500 million chats with Bing Chat since launch, which sounds like a big number, right? 500 million, 500 million chats. Wow, that sounds like a huge number. What we've got to remember, though, is Bing has 900 million searches per day. So we're talking about 500 million chats since launch. I don't know if they were talking about the sort of preview launch, which happened in February, or the sort of more public launch, which I think happened in May, which would give us a little over a month of user data. But either way, that 500 million number doesn't seem that large to me. That sort of implies if we just take May, June data and we say, all right, 900 million searches total per day, that gives about 1 in 56 searches resulting in a Bing Chat conversation, which isn't that high. And that's really the top end number. If that number is from the start of February, then obviously that's super low. So that's the first thing. It's not universally used so far, which is kind of interesting and I don't think necessarily entirely surprising. I guess the bigger question is what's happening to the traffic. So are people searching and just staying in the search results, or are they clicking through to what on Bing is citations? So clicking through, when you see, say, like, what's the best shoes for a 37-year-old who doesn't play football but likes to play football sometimes, that you see an answer and then you'd see like a little number which you can click on and go through to the website, which contains that information. Works slightly differently on Google, but are people clicking on this? Because there was a lot of questions about whether this would actually happen. It does seem that they are. So Mike said that more engagement and usage is producing more clicks overall from Bing. So this isn't the fact that there are generative AI search results in the search isn't cannibalizing all of the search traffic. There are more clicks to websites in total, both organic and paid as a result. The other thing that I think is really encouraging from a marketer's perspective is that Bing is testing making those citations sponsored. So you can run ads to have your website being the sponsored sort of citation in those answers. And that's going to be pay-per-click based. So they need clicks to go through to those citations in order to monetize them. So the fact that they're even considering that tells me that, all right, these are getting at least a reasonable volume of clicks. So that's super encouraging, because it means that we are hopefully going to be getting some traffic from these generative AI search results. Yeah, I can keep going. Jess, any sort of takeaways or thoughts based on this so far?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember as well. I'm not trying to downplay the success, I suppose. I suppose it's not necessarily a success, but there are a lot of people who are using these tools just to see. They just want to see what this is all about. How far can we push it? What can we ask it? What will it answer? And so I think it's really important to consider that in these results as well, because a lot of these people aren't going to be like your everyday average Bing user. Or your everyday average searcher. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how it evolves, how things play out when things are sponsored. Like, will it take information from that website? What happens if that information is misleading or incorrect, and then it's been put in this generative answer? And I'm very fascinated to see how they're gonna play that, because if the AI cites a website as well that's kind of targeting a keyword it shouldn't necessarily be targeting, and then they're saying, hey, you can buy an air fryer from this website, and you click through and there's no air fryers there. Or if they're recommending the worst brand you've ever seen, because it, I think it's just really, yeah, I don't know. I feel like people will treat those ads differently to the way they treat ads in a search result, because it feels like somebody's recommending it to you, which can be a pro, but I feel like it could also be a con as well for the consumer. So yeah, it's really one of those where we're going to have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I agree. And that might sound like a cop-out. We're going to have to see how it plays out. But I think that's never been more true than with this, because it not only feels early, it feels so early. Like you say, as an advertiser, as a marketer, how do I manage which AI generated answers my citation appears next to? Can I even manage it? Because if I can't, I've got questions about brand safety. If I can, how do I deal with the fact that this isn't like a keyword focused thing anymore? It's probably on a topic level, but there's going to be other aspects of that. Like, how do I add negative keywords? There's just so many questions from a marketer and advertiser's perspective that I think it's one of those where execution really is everything. The concept is solid. No one denies that the concept of generative search in search results generative AI in search results is a really interesting thing and has loads of potential. But there are so many questions over the execution that I think it's almost like, until we see how it is executed, we don't know whether as a marketer we like it or not. Another thing that I thought was quite interesting coming out of this is a big question that we've had as marketers is, how is people's search behavior going to change, particularly around the queries that they're looking for? Because we translate our thoughts for search engines. So if we are looking, I'm looking for my trainers that I'm going to wear out, but sometimes I want to play football in, I'm not asking that question. I'm not typing in all of my info into search. I'm actually typing in, a version of that, probably a 3 or 4 word phrase, which I think best summarizes that query. Whereas Mike Schechter from Bing is saying that actually the average search query is 3 times as long when using chat. So people are giving more information. They are giving more context to their question. And what was kind of interesting from Bing's feedback so far is that this more tailored and segmented search results were better serving people's queries, because they were giving more context in the search, because they could go sort of more niche with the results they were hoping to get. This was leading to people converting better, so shortened user journey, because they were able to get exactly what they wanted from the search results, so potentially a faster path to conversion, which from that we can assume that we're going to get a lower search volume in total, because rather than searching for 10 things in order to find my products, I might be able to get there from 2 or 3, so it makes those clicks more valuable along the way. but it also means I might get less traffic. I might expect to get less traffic, but with a higher conversion rate. So that'll be interesting to see if that plays out, because I think that user behavior piece was a big question. I didn't really know whether people were going to change their search behavior or they're just going to carry on typing the same things they've always typed in. But it does look like they are going to change.
Completely. Yeah, I very much agree with that. And just from personal experience, even when I'm not using a chatbot, I feel like I'm asking Google longer questions just because I'm like, well, I almost know what the other side looks like. I know the answer I could get from ChatGPT. So I'm kind of wanting that. I'm like, well, if ChatGPT can understand that, why can't Google understand that? And sometimes I just don't have the words. I can't do that translation. I can't translate it down to the way that, you're suggesting. So I think, yeah, very, very interesting. It's going to be, now that it feels like all the hype has died down and the real work can begin. That's kind of how it feels. So it's like, even though, don't panic if you've been really into AI and you're like, oh, I put a lot of time into this, because I think this is where the real progress will start. It's like there's a big rush and everybody's trying to do stuff. Whereas now it's kind of refined down. We've distilled it down to what's most important. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens kind of in Q3 and Q4. Should be exciting to see. I think that's all we've got time for today, Tim. If you are listening to this podcast, don't forget to hit subscribe, share it with your marketing pals. We get loads of good feedback. Loads of people really, really love this podcast. So why not share that love with everyone else? We also record this live over on our YouTube channel, which is Exposure Ninja Podcast. And we also put out a video once a week, or sometimes twice a week if we're feeling particularly fancy, on our main YouTube channel, Exposure Ninja, which also people really love. So if you want more of Tim, that's where you go. That's about it.
If you want more marketing, then
Don't know why I said if you want more of Tim. I had a joke there, but it didn't. I forgot it.
Or just come around and we can hang out all day.
Yeah, there we go. Sorted. Great. Yeah. And also,
see everyone tomorrow then.
Last thing is, if you're unsure how your marketing and website is performing and you'd like to get some insights from a professional team of marketers, you can request a review at exposureninja.com/review. Send you a 15-minute video of a bunch of insights and stuff that you can action right away. It's done by people, not by robots, not by AI, and it's absolutely fantastic. Cool. I think that's us done.
Great. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.